anyway, Mary had grown up by now, and she was also working in Vancouver, and so she said, you know, we should do day work. We'll rent a little suite and we'll do day work. So, you know, we'd have more time off and we'd get more money. It was harder work, but anyway, so did day work for a number of years. And then, let me see, what shall I say next? I was in my early 20s, and Dad had another sort of, I'll call it a meltdown. And, oh, it was before, no, it was after, he had the meltdown. And actually, we went to church the following Sunday, and as if it was our fault, we were totally shunned. Not one person would speak to us, say hello to us. And that is when I decided I'd finish this church. So I decided I wasn't going to do housework all my life for a living. I would take a business course. Pittman's were in Chilliwack. And there I was faced with how much education do you have? And so I knew that if I was honest, I wouldn't be accepted. So I gave myself the education that would get me into business college, and graduated from business college, and then went to work in Vancouver. And my first job was with an insurance company, and then I got the idea that I would like to travel. So off to Whitehorse.
Here we go.
And you know, there were many jobs right over on Whitehorse, but no suite, no rooms, no nothing. You couldn't even rent in a hole in the ground. Anyway, the army was there maintaining the highway at the time, and their offices were just Quonset huts that were left behind by the Americans. And so we had no other option but to go to the army. They provided room and board for all the civilian employees. So there again, I'm forced with this, how much education have you had? And I thought, this is the government, I better be honest. So I was, and they looked at the application and said, we can't hire you. You haven't got enough education. But come back tomorrow. Because when we first arrived and asked if there were any jobs available, oh, lock the door, we're not going to let you escape. I mean, the turnover was 300%, they said at that time. So, went back the next day and, oh, well, this is the North, you know, and you've had experience and so on and so forth. And so they would give me the job as secretary to the lieutenant colonel. Oh, sorry. I was hired as secretary to the lieutenant colonel. And the first day, he was there in the office before I was, and he called me in, and I don't remember what all was said, but he said, I think they made a mistake on your application. He says, would you like to check that? Of course, the EHR in the end of her name was a problem to everybody. Alf used to say I had to marry, he had to marry me in order because he couldn't spell my last name. So anyway, I said, no, it's correct. Well, how do you pronounce it?
How you pronounce it?
Anyway, it was the cushiest job I would ever have, and would ever have for the rest of my life. And he always had to come to my office to go to his office, and he'd come in with a piece stick under his arm. Good morning, Miss Revere. I was saluted every time he came to work. He was out of the office more than in the office. So I knit, I read, I crocheted. Joanne, who was also sharing the office with me, had too much to type, or a big load of typing to do. I'd say, oh, give me some of that and I'll help you out, because, you know, why should I just sit there crochet while she's busy typing? So after we saw as much of Alaska as we could, and then we went to Dawson City, and of course had to be up on the 21st of June to see the midnight sun. And by the way, I'll just mention this, that I also had to walk through the engineer's office to get mine. These are not normal office buildings, they're just these Quonset huts. And there was the civilian engineer, Tremendous photographer. Oh my goodness. He taught me a lot because I just bought a 35mm camera. And so he did his own developing, own printing, own enlarging. I mean, he had pictures all over the offices of his. It's a real tremendous photographer. And I'm going to go forward to, oh my goodness, the 1990s. And Alf came home from work and he said, you know, I had a call from Whitehorse today. And he said, I was speaking to a Jimmy Kwong. Did you know Jimmy Kwong? And I said, oh yes, saw him every day I went to work. I mean, I had to walk through his office. And I said, will you be speaking to him again? He said, I don't know. I said, well, if you do, just give him my regards. After all these years. And he did have an opportunity to speak to him again, and then he says, do you remember Agnes Revere, who worked in Whitehorse? Oh, of course he remembers me. And so he said, I'm her husband, and she sends her regards. That was so cute. Anyway, after 14 months, back to Vancouver to plan for my holiday, my trip, my sightseeing. I was going to see the world. And
Good
so,
for you.
pardon me?
Good for you.
Good, yes. There was a ship called the Orchids that was coming from Australia into Vancouver, and they were going to go to London via the Panama Canal. So that sounded good. Booking, 1st of June, we're off to London. And has any of you gone through the Panama Canal?
Yeah.
You have? I mean, there have been changes since I went through. But I mean, there's apparently this lake, sort of in the isthmus, and so the ship has to be raised to the level of the lake through 3 gates. And then the next 3 gates to bring the ship back to sea level. And it took them all day to go through the canal. And we didn't go under our own steam, we were told. You too?
Yeah, we were told.
You were told, okay, because we were too. And that machinery that was towing us, we were called mules.
Yes, that's a donkey.
Well, mule, donkey, much the same, right? Anyway, and then Atlantic Ocean to the next stop was Jamaica, and then London. And I'm not going to bore you with all my experiences in traveling, except one thing. This one day, of course, we were using rucksacks for backpacking, and we made sure that there was a Canadian flag sewn on the back, because we didn't want to be mistaken as Americans, because you know what a Canadian is?
What?
Or who he is, main sort of
Warlock.
Well, he's so busy trying to convince the Americans that he's not British and the British that he's not American, that he hasn't got time to be himself. So, of course, the Canadian flag is very important. Anyway, we had just left the hostel, and a car pulled up, a very nice car. And, good morning, what are your plans for today? He had seen us the day before. So we told him, I mean, he was well dressed, lovely suit, white shirt, tie, well groomed, would be about in the middle 40s. Handsome at that. We told him, and so he says, get in the car. And he spent all day showing us. He took us out for tea, morning tea, for lunch, and afternoon tea, and we just had a private tour guide. And it was between 4 and 5 somewhere. He said, I have to go now. Oh, and by the way, when we introduced ourselves, he said, oh, names aren't important, he says, because you'll forget what my name is anyway in a day or two, so he wouldn't give us his name. So I wondered, first of all, I thought, is he a traveling salesman? And then I thought, you know what, he may be some city official. And he didn't want it known, right? So anyway, he drove off into the sunset. We never saw him again. I don't know his name, but we had a great day. He actually thanked us for giving him a good day and wished us all the best, and he was off. Anyway, off to Europe. So won't bore you with all what all countries we visited. Actually, Germany, I wasn't allowed to hostel because I was over 21. They only accepted, but they gave us some addresses where we could stay, and so we stayed in a home. And we met in Paris. We met a couple from South Africa, and I won't say the name right, but it was the district of Marten or whatever. And oh, you don't want to spend the winter in England? You have central heating at home and you'll be miserable. Come to South Africa because it'll be summertime there and you'll be able to find work. You can work there, no problem. Of course, it was part of the Commonwealth at the time, so in one ear, out the other, weren't interested. And we met them again in the Italian, the word isn't coming to me.
Riviera.
The Italian Riviera, and of course, when we met them, oh wow, it was like meeting your long lost cousins. You know, where have you been? And where are you going? That was always the question. Where are you going? Why are you laughing, Barbara? Anyway, I mean, the girls are hearing things they've never heard before.
I haven't either.
Yeah.
And they used to write.
Yes! Did you think I would write everything? No
Yeah.
time, no, not enough paper. So anyway, we toured Italy. We toured Italy with Isabel and Bert. Bert was an Afrikaner, and Isabel was a Scottish girl, and her mother was living in Scotland. So the last night of our touring Italy, we farewelled over spaghetti bolognese dinner and a little bit of Chianti. I don't drink wine very often because it does funny things to me. But anyway, I guess I have a little bit. And they said, you've got to come to South Africa, to Johannesburg. And I maybe did a little bit of Chianti. Said, okay. Counted all my money that I left for traveler's checks. And I said, yeah, we can do it. And still had money in the bank in Vancouver. So, okay, if we can get passage on the Bonner Castle, you'll be sailing to South Africa. And we had, they were going back to Scotland. They wanted to spend the last few weeks with Isabel's mother, who was living in Scotland. We did a little more touring and then off to London, and of course made our way to their office, the ship's office. Didn't say that he didn't have any berths available, but oh, why don't you sail the West Coast? It's so much shorter, it's cheaper and this type of thing. So, didn't seem to understand it had to be the Otter Castle leaving London on the 11th of December, or not at all. So, come back in 2 days. Went back, and then he said, come back in 2 days again. Well, this is crazy. You know what, we're going to go tomorrow. We're going to say, if you can't give us passage on the Otter Castle, we're flying home. We've had seen enough. We've done lots of sightseeing. So we're going to fly home. Well, we got there on the Saturday morning, and he had a great party Friday night because he looked a wreck. And when he saw us open the door, we were the last people he wanted to see anyway. He said, sit down. So we sat down. He says, I have a phone call to make. He says, I need an answer, and I need it right now. Hung up. He said, it was saving the last 2 berths for my friends. And as of course you heard, they decided not to go. So and so many pounds, and it's yours. The tickets are yours. Mm-hmm. So now we had 3 weeks to spend. Well, I haven't told you about the Martens that we visited because I worked with an English girl in the last office that I was in Vancouver. She said, visit my parents. So we had visited them prior to this. And they were sort of our home base while traveling. So we went to see the Martens, no relation, and told them that we were going to be going to South Africa. Could we stay with them till the ship sailed? And we were, of course, going to pay room and board. We told her, just tell us how much room and board you would like. Could we stay? Oh, she was delighted to have us stay. She was a very lonely woman. Her husband spent most of the day in bed. He would just get up at 5 o'clock for dinner and a little bit of telly, as they call it, and then to bed. So her neighbor comes rushing in, and we had met her before. Her husband owned a beauty salon, so our help has just, without notice, has just left us, and this busy season's coming, and what are we going to do? So I said, well, we're free for say 3 weeks. Is there any way we can help you? I know nothing about beauty salons. And so, off to the sink, and we were taught how to do professional shampoo. Monday morning off to Reading to work in a beauty salon. So I did all the shampoos for one of the hairdressers, and Barbara, you were on my mind. Olive did for the other, it actually was the owner, Mr. Mercer. And so we spent 3 weeks. Oh, tea. Everybody automatically got a cup of tea. So we made lots of tea, answered the phone to make appointments, and did shampooing, and just honey rollers and curlers and whatever it was. Actually, she pruned my hair before I left. Yes, that was very nice.
Get us down to the juicy part.
Juicy
When you got to Africa, did you meet Alf on the boat?
Oh, yes, I'm right there. I'm right there. We sailed after the beauty park. We went to London, and we got on a Castle ship, right? And off to Johannesburg, actually Durban. And our first port of call was Gibraltar, then we went all the way up to Genoa, and then Mediterranean. And we had a dandy storm on the Mediterranean at one time. And I wondered why all these ledges were like on the piano and everything. But boy, everything, it was just going back and forth. It was quite rough. Port Said, very uninteresting. Just the canal, no sea, nothing, to even have nice scenery. And it flows into the Suez, the Gulf of Suez, and then into the Red Sea, and it was on the Red Sea when Charles Plaster came. We were, of course, spending a lot of time on deck already because it was warm. So he comes with this young man, and he says, I'd like to introduce Marten to you. Okay. Seemed like a decent guy. He started to come up and spend time with us all. We were actually 8. There was a couple from South Africa, from rather Natal, and he was a retired journalist, and Alison and Charles from Salisbury, and then of course Isabel and Bert, and of course he joined us all. So practically every morning we would spend time on deck. I mean, it was not a cruise ship where there was a lot of activity. So they did have table tennis, and they did have a few things there to keep people amused. But anyway, after it's Port Said, I don't know how you pronounce it, but anyway, then the canal, and then to the Red Sea, and then the open ocean. And Mombasa was our first stop. And I did visit Mrs. Marten. She had a daughter, Mrs. Marten's daughter, she had a daughter living there, was married. And they were very hospitable. We, of course, had greetings from their parents. So they actually had us over to their home a number of times because we were delayed there for a whole week. The ship was waiting for cargo. Well, it was most interesting. Windows, absolutely no glass. Somebody went to Kenya, didn't they? Were in Kenya? You were, right? Anyway, they had no glass, no panes, window panes, just windows. And little lizards, about 6 inches long, were running around on the walls, under the chairs. Did you have that too?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I said to Agnes, why no window panes? I mean, I'm quite surprised. She says, it never gets cold enough to have a window. The windows are always open anyway, so why have a window pane? Okay? And what about all these little lizards that are running around all over your walls and everything? She says, oh, they're our friends. She said, they take care of all the insects. So, okay. Then our next stop was Zanzibar, then Dar es Salaam, a beautiful harbor. They said you have to get up at 6 o'clock and watch the sunrise over Dar es Salaam. I did. I actually got up at 6 o'clock.
Good for you.
Yes. I got up at 6 o'clock. And
Shake it and kind of get out.
it was really lovely. And then the next port of call was Beira. It was a port of call. So we got off the ship. We farewelled Alf. He had given me a little gift the night before.
Yourself?
Yes, he gave me a little gift. And it was a red little testament. I asked him later about it. You know, you're not religious in any way, but how come a little testament? He said the gift shop was sold out. He said it was the only gift left that had any value. So he gave me this. And you know, the unfortunate part was I used to carry it in my purse. And we were broken into, and all the contents of my purse were stolen, so I lost that. And I just said, oh, well, Lord, use that testament to maybe that whoever stole it will read it and, you know, learn the truth. So anyway, when we got to Durban, of course, we had to go through immigration. I had no restrictions on my passport. Olive had restrictions on hers. Very interesting. And went to Johannesburg by train, and my goodness, here was a stack of letters. Of course, we had spent Christmas on board, so most of them were Christmas cards. Had a letter from Johanna. Grandma had passed away, and there was a letter from Alf. It was very short, but I'll never forget the 4 words. Will you marry me?
That's good. It's about time.
I turned to Isabel and Marten and I said, you'll never believe this. I said, I've had a letter from Albany, a proposal, he wants to marry me. Bert says, I'm not surprised. You know, he really was very interested. Everybody was not surprised except me. Anyway, I had to, of course, answer his letter, right? So I said, you know, life on ground is much different than life on the sea. So I think we need to get to know one another a little better and, you know, could meet again sometime and down the road. So anyway, pardon?
Did you marry him? Did you have children?
Oh, I wonder if I married him and had children.
I guess so.
They just sit there, I think. Anyway, we corresponded. I worked in Johannesburg. I had 2. Yeah, this is the real wonderful thing. I worked at a lighting company for 2 months. I mean, these were temporary jobs. Well, somebody was on holiday or take sick leave or whatever. And the second job, 2-month job I had, was for the Sir Ernest Oppenheimer Trust, the diamond people. So when my 2 months were up, they said, what are your plans? Because we have an office in London, we have an office in New York, we will look after all the legalities that there are, and you will have a job when you get there. You just have to report. Wow, that was something. I said, I'm going to Southern Rhodesia. Well, we have a subsidiary company there. Would you be working? And I said, oh yes. I didn't know what or not, but I said, oh yes. Well, they looked after all the paperwork that was required. And all I had to do was, when I was ready, was report for duty. Wow. That was easy. That was just lovely.
Amen.
Yes. Amen.
Amen.
Yes, right.
Amen. Amen.
We spent 2 days at the we spent 2 days at the Victoria Falls. I mean, Alf met me at Bulwhale and said I booked 2 days at the Victoria Falls. I've got a few days to leave. So he had booked, don't forget, 2 rooms in case you're getting ideas. Anyway, the falls. Who has seen the Victoria Falls? Anybody? Have you seen the Victoria Falls?
Amen.
Oh, is a wow. The falls are a mile wide, and the Zambezi River was in full flood, and that water came gushing down like you wouldn't believe it, and into a gorge. And apparently the river turned there, and all this water that came down into the gorge had to be diverted to this turn in the river. The spray was just incredible. Anyway, most beautiful. Actually, they had a question on Jeopardy just recently about which was the most beautiful waterfall in the world, and it was actually the Victoria Falls. When we went back, which we did go to visit his mother later on, when we were living in Canada, they had 3 years of drought, and it was just like separate falls. It was so pathetic to see it then. But anyway, we had a great talk, and my biggest objection to getting married and living in Africa was I have to return to Vancouver. I mean, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life in Africa, whether it be South Africa, Rhodesia, or wherever. Well, he said, when I put in 10 years, I will be discharged with a good gratuity. So I would like to put in 10 years. And then I will take you back to Canada. Okay. Will you marry me? And I said, yes. Then off to Salisbury to work. And we, of course, most of our courtship was correspondence because we were miles apart. Neither of us had a car. So we had decided on getting married on November 15th. So now, we both wanted a church wedding. Johanna actually sold my wedding dress and sent it to me. And so, who is going to marry us? Well, I had the Presbyterian church right across the road, and I said, well, why not the Presbyterian church? Alf's mother was Presbyterian too, so okay, made an appointment to see the pastor, the minister, whatever you want to call him. And we brought him to his office, and we introduced ourselves, of course, and he wondered how could he help us, and I said, we are engaged, and we are planning to get married on the 15th of November, and would he marry us? And he just about jumped out of his seat, and he said, and why should I marry you? And I said, well, I'm a Canadian. I said, and I was brought up in the Midnight Church. and I said, and Alf's mother is Presbyterian, and this is why we have called on you. He said, I've been to Alberta. He said, I know the Mennonites. I have many friends there. I'd be happy to marry you.
Yeah.
Yes, I will, in a few minutes. So anyway, right after this, I will speed it up. So we were married on the 15th of November, spent our honeymoon in the Eastern Districts, and then off to Guelph. I did get a job at a shoe company till Karen arrived. And there she is. Year and 16 days later, Barbara arrived, and I was beginning to get disturbed. Not because I had a family, but because I was putting down roots. Would I get back to Canada? It was so important for me to get back to Canada. So, also, the Lord started to really work in my heart, because if the girls were going to know the truth, it would be up to me to teach them. And then he was posted to northern Rhodesia, and I actually became his typist for 1 year, and it was at that time that Johanna had to have her emergency operation. She had a tumor that had burst, and so ruptured, I should say, and so she had made quite a good recovery from it. It was cancerous, and then in 1962, a hurricane came through Vancouver. I never heard of one before then, and none since then. Mrs. Ginger used to say that hurricane came for Johanna, because Johanna gave her heart to the Lord there. at that time. It was a very difficult time for her. She was 4 days without power, and it was October. So we decided, like after a year, I had a month's holiday coming, and Alf hadn't had any, of course, so he had holidays coming too. And so we decided to go to Margate, because the Indian Ocean is so nice and warm, and the beaches are lovely, so off to Margate. And when I was in Margate, actually, her cancer, she had made quite a good recovery, but it had returned, and it came back really fierce. I mean, she was really losing strength quite rapidly. And so at Margate, I get 2 letters. Johanna is failing, and she would like to see you before she dies. And if you want to see her, you have to come home ASAP. The other letter said the same thing, and Al said you have to go home. And so the 3 of us made a journey from Johannesburg to New York, to Vancouver, to Toronto and then Vancouver. We were 36 hours en route. And when I think of it, 2.5 and 3.5, we all fared fairly well. It wasn't Toronto where Barbara was, oh, Mommy, I'm so cold. And one nice thing about traveling with little children, I was boarded first and got settled before anybody else came on board. It was a great help. Anyway, Johanna was there to meet me, and as we got to her house, she says, here are my keys, they're yours now, I will not be driving again. Went home the next day to Rosedale, and of course she had not told anyone. So you can't say that I was a surprise with my little girls. They were in shock. Anyway, back to Vancouver, Johanna got ready for bed, and she never, ever got up for other than, personal reasons. And was totally bedridden. She died on the 24th of April, was buried on the 27th, and I had a letter from Alf saying, they're breaking up the Federation. I will join you when I can. Stay in Canada and don't return to Africa. Oh, okay. So I sent him the return tickets because he could only cash them in Rhodesia. And Alf arrived on the 6th of January in 1964, and we stayed with Mother for up until the 1st of April. We moved into Vancouver to our house on the 1st of April. And I have forgotten to say one important thing. It was in Johanna's bedroom. I knelt by her bed and I received the Lord as my Savior. The years of rebellion were over. And was the last Sunday in May. Alf says, I'd like to go to church with you tomorrow. Fine. Pastor Brooks was out of town and the associate preached. Don't remember one word, but anyway, he probably did. And we went for a drive that afternoon, and he says, I'd like to hear Peter Wittenberg again, and I want to go to church tonight. Okay. Well, the sermon was from Acts chapter 10, Cornelius, who was a good man. He even prayed to God, and he gave to the poor and the widow, and he was a devout man. He was of the Italian regiment, right? And an angel appeared to him in the stream at nighttime and told him to call for Simon Peter. He would tell him what to do, and of course you all know the story, and the gist of the story is the subject there was, even the good need salvation. Doesn't matter how good we are not saved by our good works. We are saved by accepting what was done for us at the cross, the shed blood. And boy, he devoured the Bible and he grew the leaps and bounds before you know what he was preaching. He actually was one of the speakers at Mother's funeral. And and he got a job at, he took a drafting course, got a job at Concourse. They changed their name a number of times, but it was the same company. They moved their factory and the offices to Richmond. And he was there to his time of retirement. And he was working almost day and night on a job. They had him working on one job and didn't have all the information to complete it, and then they gave him another job. It was the same thing, and then they gave him a third job, and then all the information came in at once, and he was working day and night. He actually, the 1 month, had more hours in overtime than in regular pay, in his regular work. And that is when he came down with diabetes, and he passed away on the 16th of March, 2010.
Anyway, I'm gonna finish the story off. I wanted to just tell one story. I was just a little gaffer, probably 5 or 6, and we used to get taken to Uncle Abe's house for a couple of days, 3 days, Vernon's dad. And he had a John Deere agency, and he had a barrel of gas. And I used to take the rope and pour it, and I had a hard time opening up the old gas cap valves. And I put the rope into that and pulled it out and lit a match and watched it burn. And I got a licking of my life.
Uncle Abe?
Oh, yeah. I never forgot that.
Well, I guess not.
Okay, that's enough.
Anyway,
Thank you.
I'll just finish up and saying that I was involved in Pioneer Girls. I also taught Sunday school to 2 and 3-year-olds, and then 4-year and 5-year-olds. And I, as I said, I was in Pioneer Girls. I did volunteer work at the church. I used to go in every Monday morning to help Evelyn. I would stand in for her when she went on holiday, and they changed the counting of the offerings, and I was asked would I count the offerings, and I said. They gave me a partner to work with me, and I worked for years counting the offering at 10th Avenue Alliance Church and banking it. I have banked thousands of dollars. I actually, has anybody ever seen a $1,000 bill?
Yes.
You have. I didn't even know it existed. There was one in the offering one Sunday, and I mean, I was shocked, and I was really quite cautious of taking all this cash to the bank. And I remember reading about how does a man who snatches purses and steals wallets know whose purse to take? And you know what he said? They tell me. Really? Yes, he says. When a man has a lot of money in his wallet, he's forever checking that back pocket to make sure the wallet's still there. And the lady actually clutches her purse very tightly.
Okay, so that's it.